Hello, and welcome to Meet the Chargers. I'm Ethan Cardona. I'm a communications major here at the University of New Haven with a double minor in sport communication and marketing. Since the fall of my freshman year, I've wanted to create Meet the Chargers, and with the help of John Mays, Director of Athletics Shane Zanger, Dan Rudy, and Bruce Barber, Meet the Chargers has come to life. Since I started here at the university, I've met plenty of student athletes, most of them my close friends, and in my residence hall, living with them and interacting with them every day, I've learned that each has their own unique and special story. With that, on Meet the Chargers, I'll sit down in each episode with one of our incredible student athletes and learn about their lives on their teams and their lives off the field and what makes them who they are. This is Meet the Chargers. Welcome in to Season 1, Episode 1 of Meet the Chargers. I'm Ethan Cardona, and I'm here with Gabriela Garcia-Perez, class of 2024, and a member of the women's soccer team. How are you, Gabriela?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you.
Good. So, tell us just a little bit about you, your major, your background, where you're from, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned before, my name is Gabriela Garcia-Perez, and I'm from Guilford, Connecticut, which is about 20 minutes away from campus. So I am right now a business management major, and I'm participating in the 3+1 program. Okay. So I'll be able to get my master's within my 4 years. I decided to really come to the University of New Haven for many different reasons. One of them being the fact that the soccer team was very, very welcoming, and the dynamic that the team possessed was very positive, and the coach was always very willing to reach out. And actually something that really stood out for me was the fact that when I did have my interview with the coach initially, she gave me a position right then and there at that interview. And she said that regardless of what happened to me during the summer, or if any injuries were to happen, I would always have a spot on the team. So that in and of itself really felt like a sign for me to really come here. And it was a good way for me to continue my academics as well as my soccer career.
So, you had the idea, you had that guaranteed spot. So were there other schools that you were looking at, or was New Haven kind of the place since you're so close to the university?
So I really limited my selection within Connecticut just because I did want to stay close to home. I did want the option of my parents coming to watch me play, as my family is very important to me, and I really wanted them to be around. And I was still not decided on whether or not I was going to be a commuter or not. Ultimately, because of COVID, I did decide to be a commuter, and there are some difficulties in that, but it's working out right now. That's sort of the gist of that.
Okay, so you decided to be a commuter, obviously, and we'll touch on COVID throughout this because It's just a crazy way to spend your first year here. Right. But I guess I'll throw a hypothetical question in there, but if COVID weren't to happen, would that have affected your decision of living on campus?
Probably. I did want to at least have a year where I would get the college experience, and then after that year I would decide to stay home. Okay. But there were a lot of different factors in that, whether or not I was getting enough scholarship money, or if I could raise enough money like working during the summer. So obviously I did want to stay, but at the end of the day that's not what happened, which is okay.
Okay. So let's take it way back.
Okay.
To when you first picked up a soccer ball. Uh-huh. When was that, and what was that experience like for you?
Okay. So I grew up in East Haven in my elementary years. So soccer started at a very young age. I come from a very big soccer family. My dad is a coach, and his main job is an engineer, but he actually played at the University of New Haven on the men's soccer team. And so I always had that big influence of soccer within my family. And he's originally from Ecuador, my mom's from Colombia. So obviously with their Latin roots, it originates there with soccer. But I started out with just town clubs. And that's something I think very important to mention, just because I didn't do Premier, which is usually what many people do at a very young age. I didn't do Premier until the start of high school. Okay. So I was always very involved within my clubs within the town. So I obviously started in East Haven. Then I moved to Guilford in 6th grade. And I was met with a bunch of really great girls, and Coach David Ibarra was my first coach in Guilford, and my dad was the assistant coach. So it started there where my dad started coaching, and then eventually he got very, very involved as far as the program of soccer within our town, and right now he's the director of coaching for the Soccer Club of Guilford. He, in years past, won Coach of the Year within Connecticut for CGSA, which is Connecticut Junior Soccer Association, and he also won the Region 1 Coach of the Year for CGSA as well. So big soccer family. That's how kind of soccer originated. But I also was a swimmer when I was growing up. And yeah, my brother, he too is a very big soccer kid. He knows ins and outs of all the different teams, the subs of the subs. So he's very just well-rounded as far as soccer IQ.
Okay. So, you mentioned that you have such a big soccer background from your family. So how much of that directly impacted you growing up as far as like, was your dad coaching you and how long was he coaching?
Yeah, so my dad coached me from the very beginning, starting at the youth levels, and he quickly moved up to being my head coach for a very long time. And I remember going to practice with him and then staying after, and we would work on the different techniques that I needed to work on, my shooting, the strength of my shot. So he had a big influence on my development throughout middle school and high school.
Did he play the same position as you?
I believe he played forward and defense. I'm a midfielder, but my dad's the type of person that can play really any position that is thrown at him.
Okay. So you said that you were a swimmer as well. So at what point did you realize swimming's not for me and I need to take soccer to the next level?
Yeah. So around later stages in middle school, I was practicing at the pool for about 2.5 hours, and then later I would go to soccer practice. And obviously it was very difficult for me to give 100% to both, being that I was always so tired, and swim practices every day as well as soccer. So my mom really sat me down and really talked to me about what I wanted to focus on. And I mean, at that age, well, at a very young age, I did all different sports, and so they started narrowing down as I got older. But swimming and soccer were the two sports that kind of lasted the longest. And ultimately, we chose soccer just because I enjoyed it a lot more, and it was just the better decision for me.
So switching over from athletics to academics, obviously, part of it was being able to have that spot on the roster, but part of it is still you're here to get an education. You have the 3+1. Right. So what about academics made you want to come here?
Yeah, I definitely believe the 3+1 program was the biggest incentive for me to come to the university. Obviously, having a grad degree is very marketable, and having it within the 4 years especially can really land me a better job coming out of college and not having to pay the extra years of grad school to do so. So ultimately, the 3+1 program really was the defining factor in my academic decision.
So why business management? What about that industry kind of piqued your interest?
Yeah. So obviously I am the founder of the Community Integration Mentoring Program, CIMP. And throughout the years, I've really learned a lot about the nonprofit sector and different organizations within the New Haven area that do a lot for the community. I was trying to decide my major from a relatively young age, freshman year, which was hard at first, and slowly I started limiting my options. But I do think I will be switching to business analytics soon, just because it's more stat-oriented, more data analysis, and that I think will be most marketable. But I did choose to do business management just because I would like to work in the nonprofit sector when I get older. And if anything, a business major and potentially an econ minor as I move on can help me in that realm.
So clearly you kind of have your plan set up for beyond college. So you kind of jumped to a question I was going to ask you later on, but what went into wanting to create CIMP?
Yeah, so I actually started getting very involved within the New Haven Board of Education system. And I met Danielle Diaz, who is currently the parent coordinator for the Board of Ed, as well as the the president of Arte Inc., which is a nonprofit in New Haven that helps urban youth, specifically Latinos, to really learn about art culture and just the Latin culture in general. So after talking with Danielle Diaz about different aspects within the city, he invited my family to attend an event that was focused towards the families that had just recently arrived from Puerto Rico after the hurricane. And in attending that event, I really realized a major social issue. Obviously, with these kids coming to the nation, they were new to the school system, and some of them were new to the language. This idea of being submerged into the school system without learning the language is not new to me, but specifically in this event, it made it a lot more evident to me. So I then spoke to Daniel Diaz about doing something about this, how we could help these students, and he quickly put me in contact with the principal at Fairhaven Middle School. After meeting with Principal Cordero from Fairhaven Middle School, he talked to me about the Saturday Academy that the district already provided for their students. Essentially, it's an extracurricular program that is within Saturday mornings, Saturday afternoons, and these students are given a place to go and work on their math skills, English skills, interpersonal skills, and it's also a way for their parents to put them in a place where they know is safe while they're at work. So that's where CIMP is basically working within. So that's basically the gist as to why it started initially. And a little background is, as I mentioned before, I'm Colombian and Ecuadorian, so my mom's Colombian, my dad's Ecuadorian. But I grew up in East Haven, I was born here, but my first language is Spanish. And that wasn't because my parents didn't learn English or didn't know English, it was because they knew that once I was put into school, I would automatically be submerged within the English language culture and learn it. As I mentioned before, I grew up in East Haven, so I was surrounded by people who spoke English, and this was no problem for me to do. But for the people that are specifically from Fairhaven, which is a sector within New Haven, it's very Latino-based. So if a student does not speak English and goes into the school system, they wouldn't have a problem with communicating with others, just because their classmates, their teachers, everybody can speak Spanish. So they're not really submerged into that culture, and that ultimately can have a huge impact on their development of English.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like, when did it start for you? Like, what year did you really create it?
In 2017, the end of 2017, we started our meetings and everything, and then 2018 is when we actually started the session. So we started with only about 6 people, and I started it with my friends specifically just because it was a pilot study and I wanted to see how it would work out, so it'd be easier to recruit my friends. And my brother was actually my first mentor, my brother Sergio, who is going to be is a freshman right now at Guilford High School. And he, along with 5 other of my friends, would attend these sessions on a weekly basis. We would work with a select amount of students that the teachers picked out for us, and we would carry out the different lesson plans, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But later on, it quickly grew, and right now we're at about 50 active mentors, and we bring about 15 students or mentors each session. So we really have grown a lot, and it's really become very popular for a lot of these students. And actually, a lot of these students are using CIMP as their volunteer project, essentially, to show National Honor Society within the high school system, their involvement within the community.
Gotcha. How old were you when you started this?
I was a sophomore, so I actually started it as a capstone project.
Okay.
And so I didn't necessarily do it for the capstone project, but it was a good way to get some school credit within the project that I already had in plan.
Yeah. So trying to build something that was important to you while still being able to get credit for it.
Right.
Okay. So go into a little more about, I know you said you're going to get to
the lesson
plans and things like that.
Right. So basically, CIMP is really focused on teaching all of these kids the importance of community involvement. So every project that we have has that idea in mind. This past year, we created this mat that's made out of plastic back material, and these mats are usually used by people who are homeless because they insulate heat and because they're durable. But the students were able to learn how to crochet, how to fix the bags in a certain way, work on their teamwork skills, all in the process of also learning about plastic bag pollution and homelessness awareness. So it was a good way for these students to do something about the things that they were learning within their project.
Wow. I think it's just insane. I know, like, I'm 20 and it's kind of weird to be like, wow, like, how'd you do that so young? But it's like, to see the passion that you have for it is really just remarkable.
Thank you.
So how have you been able to stay involved now that you're here?
Yeah, so actually really staying close to home was another thing that would help me continue CIMP. And I would like to make it a nonprofit at some point. Right now we actually have been meeting with the students throughout the summertime and throughout the pandemic and the quarantine session. They were in school, so we have been keeping it everything in the motions of CIMP. During the pandemic, or during the quarantine session of the pandemic, we really focused on giving back to the people who were in need. So we did multiple different food drives, and we did the Grocery Project Initiative, which was basically connecting families who were willing to donate groceries to families in need in the greater New Haven area. So as far as the food drives, we had Jinga FC and Everson Soccer Academy organized a food drive with us, and as well as the Soccer Club of Guilford, and also the class of 2020 at Guilford High School. So all these different groups are really involved in helping us get the word out and having people donate their groceries. And after this, we would give the groceries to Hope House in New Haven, which is it's an organization that's starting up, but basically they help homeless people by creating essentially a home for them to be during the day. As you know, as far as shelters, they do close at around 6 a.m. So at that point, everybody is basically told to leave, and during the day, they don't necessarily have a place to go. So during the wintertime, it can get really hard. So Hope House has created this center for them to wash their clothes, get counseling, get a meal. So this is where we were giving our food to.
Gotcha. So how did all that, like, obviously during a pandemic, that's probably 10 times harder on top of already being hard as it is. So how were you able to do that, you know, while you were in quarantine and trying to get so many different organizations together to really put this?
Yeah, no. So Danielle Diaz has been a huge help in really getting the word out about everything and getting the right contacts and giving me the right contacts. So he has been a tremendous help throughout this entire process. And Danny put me in contact with Hope House, and I basically was the medium for the communities that wanted to help to have a location where they wanted to put their food in. So CIMP was a collaborator between all of these different food drives and grocery initiatives.
So I know you mentioned eventually creating a nonprofit. So obviously being in school and running a nonprofit is probably not the easiest thing in the world. So who are you looking towards to kind of like, I don't want to say hand the reins off to, but kind of like assist you as you continue your way through college?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a leadership team that helps me a lot in finding new recruits within the high school and also just getting the word out to different people. But my brother most definitely is going to be the person that will be carrying this on. And obviously I'm not going anywhere for any 4 years now, but I will definitely continue to be involved. But Sergio, my brother, is really he's a part of the leadership, obviously, team, and as Lauren Cyrus, Juan Salas, and Nick Salato. So them four have really been a huge help this year in just facilitating everything. And whenever I wasn't able to attend a session, they would obviously run it. But they are seniors, juniors, and a freshman. So, and I also have many different liaisons within the middle school to help me recruit. So this has been the main leadership team that has helped me to really continue this program. And if it wasn't for the mentors, this would never have been able to continue. I really do thank everybody who has been so supportive and so involved in everything that CIMP has done. And the Guilford community specifically has been extremely supportive, and the selectmen and all of the different restaurants and organizations within our town have really been super supportive in getting everything with CIMP out there.
So it's obviously a big community effort to put that all together, and I think that community, it seems like it starts at home for you. So you said that your brother is the one that's gonna kind of follow up with you in the high school, and then he also had a big influence with you as far as soccer. So what does your relationship with your brother mean to you?
No, my brother is very, very special to me, and yes, we have a very, very tight family. So within my family, it's my mom, my dad, my brother, and my grandmother. And all of them have been super supportive in everything that I've done, and we are a very loving family, and we support each other and really back each other up with everything. We always attend our games. There's not a game that my parents don't miss as far as anything. Any event, any concert that my brother has, we're always there as a unit.
Okay. So as we kind of get back towards school and your freshman year, like I said, it's a very different freshman year. So what was it like for you to kind of navigate over the summer once you knew you were going here, going into SOAR and all that kind of stuff, and trying to get yourself acclimated when you really can't see anybody?
I know it's been very difficult, and especially the situation with the mask. Like just passing through the halls and passing through the campus, you can't tell if somebody's smiling at you, and I feel like that specific idea is so hard to wrap yourself around, because I mean, it's as simple as a smile can go a very long way, and knowing that person's friendly, knowing that person is someone that you might want to talk to, so just not having that is a huge deal. Being a commuter has also had an impact on that as well. Obviously, I do try to be on campus as much as I can with events, and being on the soccer team has really allowed me to be integrated within this community. But ultimately, it does have an impact as far as not having a roommate or not being exactly within the know of everything around people. Getting to meet people has been a little harder, but it's been doable as far as having hybrid classes. Yeah. So that has also been a very huge help. So as you know how that works, like one day you attend classes and the other day you don't. But the people that I have met in those classes have really helped me as far as having a point person to have questions and to ask those questions about the assignments that we have, and creating those friendships has been made possible because of the hybrid situation.
Okay. So, kind of going from the summer into now, and you kind of mentioned it already, but what did being on the soccer team do to help you, since, like you said, you couldn't really tell if people were smiling at you, and it was hard to acclimate yourself and really make new friends. So how is being able to spend so much time with the women's soccer team help you?
Absolutely. And I think all of them are so welcoming, and that has been a huge point in feeling so glad to be here. So over the summer, we would have pickup games and like mini practices, not oriented with the school or affiliated with the school, but it was a good way for people to meet up. And through that, I was able to meet a lot of the different people on the team, and all of them being super nice and telling me the different things that I could look forward to at the university. And the coaches and the coaching staff have been extremely welcoming and understanding as far as everything with COVID. We have to wear masks during practice, so that has also been unique in and of itself. But ultimately, the soccer team has been a great way to meet people that are older and within my own grade.
So it's kind of hard not to talk about the mask, but what is it like practicing for an hour, 2 hours with the mask on?
It's hard, especially on conditioning days when we're just running. It's nice having those little water breaks, because that's the only time that you can really fully breathe, and especially on the hot days it can get worse. But ultimately, everybody has to do it, and if this is the only way that we're going to be able to stay on campus for a lot longer, then it's what we have to do.
So obviously it was kind of up in the air for a while as to if we were going to play and how that was going to go about. So what was your reaction when you found out that there weren't going to be sports this fall?
I mean, obviously I was sad, but if that's what it takes to really slow the progress of this pandemic, then that's what's needed. Not having a season is very sad, but so many people have been affected with COVID in such worse ways that we can't be complaining about it.
So obviously there is the chance that there is a spring season. What do you think that transition is going to be like, since high school is typically in the fall as well, but obviously if you're playing on a club team, you're kind of playing year round. Right. So do you think it'll be an easy transition to be playing in February and March, or is it just something that you're used to already?
I think it's going to be interesting, just because obviously all of us are used to having a season right when we start school and having that environment of go, and having games every couple days. But we have been training, and I think that it'll help us be more fit later on. Just having the mask and being and training in an environment that enables us to have less oxygen can really help us in the long run, I think. So it's going to be weird. It might be a little hotter than normal, but at least we're given hopes that there will be a season.
So do you think it'll be what's the word I'm trying to use here? Do you think it'll be easier as a team to kind of develop your skills since you have a full semester to just work on building team chemistry? Or do you think not playing for this long will affect you in the long run?
I think as I've seen in the past, so this past year as a captain within my high school, I really saw the importance of having a strong friendship within the team. And that, I think, was the factor that helped us go so far in the state championship and the SEC championship. Having the camp outs, having the bonfires, the pool parties, all that really just helps to build that team chemistry. And ultimately it helps you to be able to communicate with them on the field a lot quicker and not feel bad about telling them something, and feeling that you can tell them whatever and them not being offended or anything. And it's a lot easier to hold people accountable if you're friends with them. So I think that right now, as far as getting to know all the girls, it's really important that we're getting to know each other as people first and not just as players. And I think that that's what this fall is giving us the chance to do.
So getting to know your teammates off the field is really important. And you mentioned kind of the stuff that's really awesome about high school sports is like the bonfires and things like that. What you're doing when you're not playing. So what have you guys been able to do? Obviously it's been limited due to the pandemic, but what have you been able to do off the field to kind of build that chemistry with each other?
Yeah, so off the field, there are a lot of limited things that we could do, but on the field, we are divided into small group settings. So it really does develop that idea of developing those personal connections rather than the whole group being together all at once and only getting to know someone barely. So I think that the idea of the small group settings can really help us to have our little groups, have our knowledge of those specific people, and then little by little we'll be increasing the amount of people that are within our groups, and that can help us ultimately to be a stronger team.
So do you think this kind of helped you or hurt you as far as academics, like transitioning to school and not playing this semester as opposed to being thrown into games and classes for the first time?
It's definitely weird. I'm used to having a super busy schedule all the time, and especially during the fall, like it's ridiculous as far as the amount of work that they give us in high school and having games every couple days. In college, everybody expected to have a really busy schedule, and I mean, as a person that's taking 6 classes right now, everybody told me that it's going to be ridiculous, even having soccer on top of that. Right now it's very doable, I would say. It depends on the major, obviously, but I think that having that time to really adjust yourself, and especially everything with COVID, it would be a lot more beneficial for us freshmen to have that sort of scenario rather than being thrown into the season with COVID and with everything and not knowing what to expect.
So obviously you're used to having a busy schedule, and it's not to say that you're not busy, because 6 classes is definitely hard to do. So what have you been doing in your kind of spare time just to like keep your head up and just keep yourself busy and things like that?
Yeah, obviously everything is kind of scheduled out in its day, so I don't necessarily have that much free time. But at night, when my family, we all watch TV, that's a way for me to decompress. Listening to music, listening to podcasts in the car. I recently bought my car, so I didn't necessarily have a car throughout high school. So it's been really nice to just play music in the car by myself and just listen to that, and that's been a huge decompressor for me.
So what is your go-to kind of vibe, just to put you in the mood?
So reggaeton and champeta, which is it's a music that's very specific to the coastal region in Colombia, and it's slowly spreading to the rest of the country. But my mom's from the coast, so when we go there, that's what a lot of people listen to. But those are the 2 main types of songs that I listen to.
As far as TV, what's kind of like your family's go-to? Like, we have to be at the TV at this time.
Okay. So during the summer, we were watching Casa de Papel, which is Money Heist on Netflix.
Okay.
So it's a show that's from Spain, and actually my cousin from Spain introduced us to that show, and we were hooked to it. We'd watch so many episodes during the day or during the night. But right now, my family is watching a novela, which, like in English, it would translate to telenovela or a soap opera. But specifically, these types of soap operas from Colombia aren't necessarily super dramatic. This is one that's telling the life of an artist within the country and his life and how he develops. So it's really, it's an enjoyable novela because it has music and people just break out into like different songs and different like concerts. So it's not so much of a dramatic show than anything else.
Gotcha.
It's real life.
Yeah. So obviously you have that. You mentioned podcasts. So what kind of stuff do you like to listen to? What's your is there a specific genre of podcast, or is it just one that you got hooked on?
One specific. I started listening to the Michelle Obama podcast recently, and it's been really interesting just having so many people that she's interacted with throughout her life to come on and basically relate back to the years that they were together and how that had an impact on her life, and ultimately how that helped her be a more well-rounded person within her husband's presidency.
Okay. So culture obviously played a role in that, and the culture shock of moving from East Haven to Guilford. What does your heritage mean to you?
My heritage is very important to me. I think that it will always be something that's a part of me, and I think that with everything I do, my background and my upbringings will always have an impact on my decision making. My grandmother has been a huge influence in that as well. She's Colombian, and the food, the songs, the music taste, the Christmas festivities, like you mentioned. So we in Colombia do something called novenas, which are 9 days prior to Christmas. We celebrate for each night, doing prayer, doing food, celebration with your whole family. So how it works is every family hosts for a certain night, and everybody shows up. So I think that is my favorite part of Christmas, and that is probably the favorite part of my culture as well, just because it's so family oriented and it's so happy in everything that it does. Specifically in Colombia and the coast, everybody's so carefree, everybody's so happy, and it's just a completely different environment. My plan was after Thanksgiving, being that we're going to be online, my plan was to go to Colombia and stay with my grandma, who's right now stuck in Colombia just because of COVID, and just do my online classes from there. Just because I would be home anyways, so it would be a fun thing to do. It would be the only chance for me to ever do that. But we do visit Colombia every year, so it was really weird not going this year.
Yeah. So do you think that well, actually, what has that been like, not being able to go down there and see your grandma and do something that you've done, seems like every year? Yeah, no,
it's been very weird, and I feel terrible for my grandmother, who is a very active person, who is a very well-known person around her city, and not being able to leave her apartment. So in Colombia, it's a lot more strict. People have their designated days to go to the grocery store based on their last digit in their ID. And if they go on the day that's not designated to them, they're fined or they're penalized in some sort of way.
Wow.
Even if you do go to the grocery store, you are completely sanitized. The bottoms of your shoes are dipped in alcohol. So people are really taking this seriously, as they should, to prevent more deaths within their city. Specifically within Santa Marta, which is the city in Colombia where my family's from, or my mom's from. They don't have the infrastructure isn't strong enough to really hold up a community that is completely sick. So they really have to prevent as much exposure as possible. As I mentioned before, so my grandmother is very, very involved. So not being able to leave her apartment since a couple months before we weren't able to, and all this time being closed up is just beyond. It's crazy to imagine. She is a person who actually recently she was touching up on her iguana sanctuary. So many years ago, she created a sanctuary for iguanas that is right across her apartment house because originally they would walk from the canal to the apartment pool. And in doing so, lots of the motorcycles or the cars would run them over. So to really prevent that, she created a sanctuary for them with little lagoon and information for people to learn about iguanas and the different types and the importance of them for the ecosystem. And it's a very touristic place as well. So it really gave gave tourists a place to go and to really bring more revenue into the city.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So clearly, your family has had a big influence on you, but your family seems to have had a big influence on everyone around them, trying to give back and things like that. You mentioned obviously before when I asked you about your culture. What else about your culture kind of stands out to you that we haven't talked about yet?
Let me think. I think something that is kind of funny to mention. So within my town in Guilford, we are probably one of the couple Hispanic families within our area. Okay. So a lot of my friends love coming over to eat our food, and actually 4 or 3 of my neighbors who have become some of my best friends have made a ritual of coming over to eat arepas, which are, it's difficult to describe, but they're made out of cornstarch and they can be fried, they can be grilled, but this was always just so enlightening for them, and it was crazy for my grandmother to have to teach them how to do it, and they were just so excited to do that. And I think that mentioning that can really show how involved my family is in really bringing that sort of culture within our town. And my mom especially has been someone who has been tremendously involved in everything that we do, and ultimately that has an impact on how the community sees us as a family.
So what is one thing that's really impressed you, or something that you're really proud of that you and everyone that's a part of CIMP has been able to accomplish?
Yeah, so this past year, CIMP has been recognized on many different platforms, and thankfully it has really showcased the level of passion and all of the work that we've put into this over the years. Recently, our group was awarded by the DAR, which is the Daughter of American Revolutions, CJSA, Connecticut Junior Soccer Association, Points of Light Award, and finally the Prudential Spirit Award, which is the largest youth volunteer award within the nation. So each state picks one high schooler and one middle schooler to represent the state within DC. Everybody goes to DC, and we have a big week-long event where people are able to interact and really talk about their programs and talk about their community involvement, and finally talk to different people that are within the sectors of nonprofit. And this year we actually were able to talk with Kristen Bell, who is the voice of Elsa in Frozen, and she's also a part of many other different shows and movies, but she was the guest speaker, and it was really great talking to her about all of her charity involvement and really talking about how it is a big business, which is something to wrap your mind around, just because lots of times we get into community involvement just out of the kindness of our heart. But ultimately, this is something that is a business, and ultimately it's something that people make money off of, so it needs to be profitable. But we had to obviously do this all online because of COVID, but it was ultimately a really great experience to be a part of it and to represent all of the mentors and all of the people in my community and Connecticut as a whole within this event.
I know you mentioned before we started there was something about your family, something that your family does that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so my family, from a very young age, my mom participated in capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts, and she did it before she was pregnant with me, and slowly my brother and I and my dad ultimately became super involved within the capoeira community. Efraim Silva, which is the mestre, which is the master within our center for capoeira. He is based out of New Haven. but I know that he actually just recently made the decision to move to Florida, and we are so happy for him, but he will be greatly missed. But he has been a huge contributor to the New Haven community, specifically the Yale community, because so many people have learned about capoeira, the Brazilian culture. Capoeira is a mixture of martial arts, acrobatics, music, so really submerging the people from this area into capoeira as a whole. So he was actually the first one to bring capoeira into Connecticut. So it's a very big deal that he is now moving on, but obviously we're very happy for him. But because of that, my family was able to learn Portuguese slowly, and my dad is pretty much fluent, and my mom is as well. But it's been a great way to learn about the music and the culture and just everything about it.
So, thank you, Gabriela, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Ethan.
Of course, and just thank you for allowing everyone to get to know you a little better, and joining the first episode of Meet the Chargers is really awesome. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I'm Ethan Cardona, and this is Meet the Chargers.